How's it going, everyone? My name is Caleb, also known as the headmaster of Shufflers University, and today I'd like to show you something special I've cooked up. Voiceless Voice NEKROZ. This is something that I really wanted to put together with the Phantom Nightmare set coming up, releasing the archetype of Voiceless Voice to the TCG, and something I really wanted to try and put together during the pre-release that, the sneak peek that my OTS did this past weekend. So I'm going to show you what I played at the event. I went 2-2. I would like to caveat that with I played almost entirely against Fire King or Rescue Ace or a Fire Pile, and it was competitive all the way through. Some real nail biters, and really could have gone a little bit better if I had optimized this build a little bit better. And I'll kind of walk you through some of those missing pieces, some small changes, some learnings as I walk you through this initial build of the deck, and we'll see what we get as we go through that. So let's go ahead and let's start it off here with our NEKROZ. Not our NEKROZ, with our Voiceless Voice. You'll see to start, I only have one of each of the non-ritual monsters. Low is like 80-70 bucks right now. The set doesn't officially release for another couple days. So didn't really want to try and spend, an absurd amount of money to get 3 copies of her. In this deck, in this version, playing NEKROZ, I'd only play 2 anyway. I would play 3 Saphira. I was able to pick up one after the tournament, so easily going to slot that in, and I'm picking up another one from a friend. So to make this deck instantly better, play 2 low, play 3 Saphira. You could bump up to 3 low. Most lists currently are playing 3. I think with NEKROZ, you're good on 2 and then 3 Saphira. And then you only ever need the 1 main regular Saravis. 2 Skull Guardian is also pretty standard for Voiceless Voice. The main crossover in this deck between the Voiceless Voice and NEKROZ is going to be that Skull Guardian's Ritual Summon effect allows you to search your deck for either a Voiceless Voice monster or one Ritual monster that is either a warrior or a dragon, which is every NEKROZ we're playing except for exactly Unicorn, which doesn't matter because we can get to Unicorn off of Brionac. So that's kind of the main connection here. You're going to want to, basically, your end board is going to be in some form or fashion. Skull Guardian, a low, you want a barrier on the field, and then ideally, depending on what your hand looked like, you'll have added off of Skull Guardian some way to get Unicorn on field going first, and going second, there is a way to not fairly consistently get a Trishula onto field as well to try and push for game by banishing a bunch of stuff from opponent's hand, field, and graveyard, 1 from each exactly. So this adds a little bit of extra sauce to this deck, to the Voiceless Voice, which is already quite good, and I think one of the only real contenders we have coming up against the fire homogenous deck that is going to be close to tier 0, it seems like, as we get into this next format with Phantom Nightmare. So that's kind of the main idea here, is that Skull Guardian gets you access to the NEKROZ stuff if you don't already have access to it in hand. And because of how good NEKROZ is at getting from Brio to a ritual spell or Brio to another name that you need, this gets you to Brio almost every time, and then Brio gets you what you really need. Can also get you Colossalus directly, but in order to get to the Trishula line, you usually go Brio Colossalus to get Mirror, and then if you have Trishula in hand already, then you can summon it. So it's kind of the idea here. I would like to say, before we get too far from here, I do actually think that adding NEKROZ to this adds meaningful levels of complexity to the end board and to going second capacities. I don't think that it's cope. I don't think that it's just me trying to build something funny. I do actually think that NEKROZ has legs. It may not be the best version of Voiceless Voice, but I think that it is different enough and it adds enough that it's going to catch your opponents off guard. Firstly, they're not going to be expecting or playing around some of these types of interaction. It's a little bit harder for them to deal with because outing Unicorn in this past weekend at the sneak peek, a lot of my opponent's energy went into outing that Unicorn that I had going first, or even going second sometimes if you open Unicorn Kaleidoscope or access to Kaleidoscope. So I think that it adds a really interesting level to the deck that is actually impactful and meaningful, and it's not just, ooh, I brought out some old cards and we're trying to make them good again or something like that. We're not trying to cope here. I do actually think that there's something here, and it's going to take a little bit more testing from me until I land on a finalized list, but this is kind of the idea. Let's get it moving. We got the 2 Saravis. I think that's fairly standard. Playing 3 Barrier, I would like to cut this down to 2. I played 3 because I didn't have all the cards necessary, so this was kind of a replacement for the second low. I would cut 1 barrier though in a proper build. We have 2 prayers and 1 radiance. These are also pretty standard as well. Most lists that are playing pure voiceless will probably play this lineup of 6. I cut one barrier and I cut one voiceless from the standard lists to try and fit space for NEKROZ, because I think you don't really need 3 low. I think 2 is normally going to be fine, unless your opponent really is just playing so much hate to prevent low from getting out of the graveyard. So this is what I played. If you want to make this list, I would cut the 3rd barrier, add an additional low, put in 2 more Saphira. That is all of our Voiceless Voice stuff. Now for the honorary Voiceless Voice, obviously we're playing 3 Diviner, 1 Trias Hierarchia, and 2 Prep, pre-prep. You could play 3 pre-prep, but I like this lineup of 6. Again, a part of the consideration of this deck is we need space for the NEKROZ stuff to fit in. It's like a 8 or 9 card engine, I think, and so we got to make certain sacrifices along the way to get there and to get the deck count low enough. What I'm showing you today is 42. The list that I've been playing around with and testing have been 45. You know, basically this list as is, tossing in the missing 2 Saphira and 1 low. But there are some spots that I'll mention along the deck profile where you can cut some space to drop that. But I also would argue that having a higher deck count is good because we're playing more ritual spells and we want to avoid bricking on rituals as hard as possible. So playing above 40 is actually a good idea, because I had first round of the day, I opened 3 ritual spells across 2 in both games that we played, and I got quickly 2-0'd. Because I just had ritual spells, and I either, if I had a starter, it was, you know, instantly hand trapped, or I just didn't open a starter. So I think it's really important to try and dilute the deck from that, and we can just add consistency pieces. So honestly, bumping to 3 pre-prep is something I'm going to try in the future to avoid bricking and just add more consistency to the deck. Only issue is that pre-prep dies to droll really hard. What also can die to droll pretty hard is the NEKROZ stuff, but that's why this is sort of a end of combo thing for the most part. We're playing 1 Trish, 2 Unicorn, 3 Brio, and a Colossalist. I think that this lineup is solid. You could play Valkyrius. I don't really think it's very relevant in this version of the deck, and I think that we want to try and cut down on anything that is going to be bricky. Opening Unicorn isn't bricky because we're playing Kaleido, and so even if you open Unicorn, your normal line will get you to Kaleido eventually, and so this is a starter right here pretty much, because you can Unicorn sending Diviner from the extra deck. It also is a going second piece because you can send Entis as well to out your opponent's boards. So we have the 2 Kaleido, 1 Mirror, and 1 Cycle. I'm cutting Cycle. It never came up. It bricked me. I don't think that this card is necessary in this list. I honestly, whenever I saw it or I thought about using it, I was like, I don't really see when this comes up, so I'm cutting this, and I'm just going to play these 3 rituals with this ritual lineup. I think that this lineup is really solid. I would just be playing these 10 cards. Don't play any more NEKROZ than you need to, because you can brick on them if you see too many in a certain combination, but that's kind of the benefit of NEKROZ, is these 4 right here do so much for you. And even Trishula, sometimes searching this, if you have Mirror but you don't want to make it going first, this just adds targeting protection to your Unicorn to prevent it from getting outed. Kind of like a Saravis Light. So I think that this package is really good. I think that it adds a lot to the deck, again, in a meaningful way, and I don't think it's cope. I don't think that we're just playing around with bad cards for the fun of it. This is our hand trap non-engine lineup. 3 Ash. I'm considering swapping this for like Droll or Veiler. Particularly with Firepile's relevancy. Hida bringing back my own Ash kind of feels really bad, and so I'm considering swapping off of that, since I also don't really think that Ash is super impactful into that deck. Just try and find something that's a little bit more impactful. Nibiru, I've had some people question Nibiru. Nibiru is really good because it's engine, in that it's a light that you contribute for the summon, using Saphira's Banish ability or prayers. So Nibiru is really good, and a really well-timed Nibiru, can just end your opponent's turn, and then you can still tribute off the Nibiru off your field, so you don't even lose that utility. I would sometimes even hold this in my hand if I had other tribute fodder, because if my opponent outed my board, I could then tribute their board, and then they pass, and then now we just get to do all the Voiceless Voice stuff. It's a very recursive engine already, so as if our board gets cleared, we just, all right, we're gonna nib you now. So also playing 3 Prosperity. We are playing 45, so it helps with consistency. and we don't really need our extra deck, so getting rid of 6 never feels bad. And then the 3 Imperm, because we want to avoid triple tactics talent. I got hand ripped with talents 3 times, and it felt awful, and so Imperm staying in the main to avoid that happening ever again. Now for our extra deck, we have our Kaleido targets in the form of Entis and Herald of the Arclight. Going second, Entis is a free pop and getting Unicorn on field. Going first, Herald can search you out a ritual, so like Cerebus for targeting protection for a normal summon low, or a normal summon Diviner. It also could add you Skull Guardian if you just want to go ahead and ritual summon it out the gate. So mandatory. This is where we're going to start to get to a little bit less mandatory, just kind of playing around with the extra deck space. This deck doesn't really need the extra deck, so a lot of this is just stuff you can play around with. Linkuriboh, Anima, I think, are relevant because Linkuriboh can help you get up into SP Little Knight. Almirage also can come up in linking off a normal summon in the case of like Diviner not going through and you somehow don't have a way to tribute her. And then Anima stealing your opponent's monsters is just really solid. This comes up frequently. Dynamondo is an absolute all-star in this deck. I want to play 2 of it. He was short printed, so I don't own a second copy. Somehow did not pull a second one, so I'd play a second Dynamondo. You can find a cut. I'm going to show you a lot of extra deck cards here that are very cuttable. Cross Sheep I do think is actually quite good. Being able to hand sculpt, draw 2, discard 2 is really, really solid, and we've got a lot of rituals, so you're going to be able to resolve that effect pretty consistently. Only concern is don't do this after you've resolved Prosperity, because you can't resolve it. We have SP Little Knight, IP Masquerena. They're good cards. What can I say? If we're playing one, we're playing the other. Don't want to separate girlfriends. We then have Typhon and Zeus. Typhon is an absolute house. I love this card. I think it's really good. This deck is a really good does a really good job going second into opponents' boards. And having Typhon where, I resolve a normal summon, but I don't resolve the effect or something like that, and the rest of my plays get stopped, and I just make Typhon because they summon twice from the extra deck, and then continue to rip apart their board, just feels great. Zeus, you get off of Typhon on a turn after Typhon has been summoned, so it's kind of awkward. This is a very cuttable slot. And then here's some even more cuttable cards. Lina, Dark, Phoenix, and Underworld Goddess. So these cards are really cuttable. Really what we want here is some sort of utility. I think that Super Poly is a really good option for this deck, and it's what I'm going to be playing around with after I have the deck a little bit more built, and all these cards are street legal with the release of Phantom Nightmare in a couple days. So Super Poly, I think, fits really well into this deck to increase its going first and going second capabilities. Additional piece that I've thought about and might want to play around with is a Dogmatic package or engine where we can put in not only Super Poly but also Nadir Servant to send our Entis or our Herald or other relevant targets in the extra deck. Fleur-de-Lis is just a nice card to have, and I think that there's something there that we could probably slot into this deck. Now the whole Dogmatic part might be without NEKROZ. Maybe it's a separate version of the deck, but it's something to play around with and see how it all pieces together, and if it actually is helping the deck, or is it making it a little bit more bulky. So that's the extra deck. Again, it's pretty much a couple mandatory cards in these first handful, and that's about it. Let's go ahead and let's look at the side deck here. This is something that I feel pretty good about. I think that this hand trap lineup in the side deck here is pretty solid. DD Crow, Droll, and Lockbird, and Effect Veiler I think are all cards that you want to be playing somewhere in main or side. I would like to bump DD Crow up to 3. I think Lightning Storm is a pretty good go second option, and then we're playing Called by the Grave plus Crossout Designator. This deck can die pretty hard to Droll with certain hands, so that's a consideration. But honestly, as I play the deck more, I feel less like I really need Crossout. But I think again, it's something that I'm playing around with, something that I just want to see how it goes. If it feels like it's not, the deck can play through Droll a little bit better as I learn it better, this definitely isn't necessary. But in the meantime, Droll really is just such a backbreaking card, and so sometimes it feels nice to just be able to say, we're not going to worry about that today. Last card here is Odd Eyes Pendulum Graph Dragon. I think that this card rocks. I think it's really cool. It's something that I didn't really understand when playing until recently. I think that this is main deckable, actually. I think it's a really good option to search off of the Skull Guardian. be able to be not only a tax dragon when your opponent special summons from the extra deck, but also a spell card or effect negation, and then it scales itself to then in end phase bounce back to hand and get you a ritual spell. I think that's really solid. Something else is that since we are going to be hard ritual summoning this, when it goes to the scale for the spell trap effect or activation negation, you can special summon an Odd Eyes from the extra deck. So I'm thinking about different targets for that. There's not a lot of great ones. I believe Vortex Dragon misses timing or something like that, so that's not really a real option. And we won't have a actual extra deck Pendulum Monster for the negation. But there are some bodies we could get, and there might be a way to play around with the extra deck space to play like the Rebellion Dragon stuff. Just have a really big body that hits really hard 3 times to make this just insane for OT King turn 3, or even turn 2 if your opponent goes into the Pendulum Graph negate. I think that there's just so much room in the space of this deck to play around with and really experiment with, and it's why I wanted to try out Voiceless NEKROZ. And so there you have it. This is Voiceless NEKROZ. I think it performs really well. I think that a lot of my issues this weekend came down to not having the full engine built out because of the pre-release, and then also my lack of experience as both a player and a Voiceless Voice pilot. But regardless, I think this deck carried me really hard because it's just good. And I honestly, again, think that NEKROZ adds something interesting to the going first and going second capacities of the deck that is meaningful. And so I really think that this is going to be something that I'll be playing around with and testing going forward into this format. I think that there's something to this. Let me know what you think about the deck. Do you think I'm coping? Do you think it's cool? Do you think I'm trying to relive a format that I never got to experience? I don't know. But regardless, thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate y'all very much. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and thanks for coming to lecture, everyone. Have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.